Hi, everybody. Today we have one of my favorite people in the world, Miss Melissa Kelley. And I haven't done this with anybody else, but I'm just gonna say this. Melissa is one of the most grounded, present coaches I have ever met. And I'm really excited to hear what she has to say around and I'll ask you, Melissa, what does body mind living mean for you?
Mm. So the short answer to that is really having the tools to live and be and always steer from my heart space. Knowing that I've come to understand there's always a dance. There's always a dance between head and heart. And so I feel like body mind living is inviting some grace into the messy space and remembering that my answers are always, always, always within, right? And choosing from that space, showing up from that space, and even seeking from that space. I think so often we look outside of ourselves. I think it's human nature. The impulse, the urge is there, but when it shows up, it's just taking a moment to pause and breathe. The breath is the most amazing tool, I find, right? Like just the act of taking a breath brings you into your body, right? And body mind living means that like that's the space that I choose to consciously occupy as much as I can.
Yeah. And it is, yeah, that idea of living from the heart space. And I hear that is living from the heart space, choosing from the heart space, being curious from the heart space, like all of that from that heart space, because there is, I really do feel like body mind living is taking so much of what we're taught and literally flipping it on its head. Because for me, I always felt like I struggled, like I should be logical and rational and think things through. And for so much of my life, I felt like I fought with this, like, this is how it's supposed to be. But whenever I came back into my body and lived from my body, things just kind of happened.
Absolutely.
I am curious if that was ever your experience or,
Oh my goodness. So you and I have talked and you remember that like I had been on the body mind path for a very long time before I met you. And so I think of that sort of as like a period of like gathering and like just learning and applying. And yet, yes, like I still was missing that piece. I recognized the power of the body mind connection. Um, and yet I still cycled and struggled in my head. Like everything that my head told me to do, everything that I thought I was supposed to do, like conditioned, in everything in life and in finding my way and building my business and starting a family, all of those things. It was all from a place of thoughts, right? And so, I feel like when I found the Body Mind Coaching program and really stepped into this work, that was kind of the landing strip to bring it all together and be held in this container to like practice it, to really bring those threads, all the things I'd been collecting, bring that together and practice it and start to recognize those nuancy moments of like, oh, wait a minute. that's my body speaking, which I believe that we all know, like
Yeah, that's what I'm
intuitively,
thinking right
but
now.
we're conditioned to override that and let the head do the driving, right?
Yes.
And so that's where I think that it when in languaging, like we say, it's like the opposite, or it's almost counterintuitive. And so,
It's I'm
go ahead.
sorry to interrupt you. I had we had a body mind coach say once, he's like, you talk about things being counterintuitive when they're really actually intuitive. It's
It's like trickery for the brain,
logical. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I love this idea of practicing this, because I do agree with you. Like, there is something when you hear this, you're like, well, duh. Like, it literally rings true. And that override, the conditioning to say, oh, this rings true. This is like your body literally knows. And then boop, we override it from the head going into the shoulds and continue that path of chasing. And I think it's been such a pleasure and honor for me to, because you are powerful. You've always had this. But I feel like what I've gotten to witness is, first you honor, you acknowledged it, and then it was like you took the action and you followed it, and then you started to trust it. And and I know both of us are still very much on our journey. I love to put Melissa on a pedestal because I think she's freaking baller, and she will tell me to take her off of it immediately. But it's so amazing for me to watch, like, literally have a conversation with you. And I hope, as you all read her articles, I know every word was chosen because it literally was embodied for her. And I just, you have this calming, quiet presence that is so powerful. And I feel like the more you have honored your work, we just get to see you have power in stillness. You shift perception in that ability to really stay in your heart space. It's so cool to watch. And it's why you're here. And I think, for people who are maybe new to this work, who are like, okay, I feel this, I'm still trying to figure it out. What would you say to them?
Stay the course. The figuring it out is the brain. It's the brain doing the thing. And I feel like culturally, we are wired for wanting instant gratification. And this process, it is a process. It's a practice. And it's like strengthening a muscle over time, right? And it really, I have found, requires such a depth of trust, right? And you're actually cultivating the trust as you're finding your way through the process. And so we want this sense of security and certainty, and we're looking for it outside of ourselves, right? And it's this work, this process is an opportunity to learn the language of our body, to be present, connect deeply, right? And not just, I don't know, our body speaks to us in so many different ways, through our senses, through our feelings, through pain, through discomfort, through sensations, and when you commit to hanging out in that space and being curious, you start to notice like consistent ways that your body speaks to you, right? And it's just not, your brain can then start to make sense of it. That's where we get to invite the brain back in. It's super fun to sort of connect those dots along the way.
I almost get a sense as you're talking is part of this conditioning of that instant gratification is also, it's almost a bypass to run away from actually feeling.
Total bypass.
And what I hear you saying is feel it. Like that, like step one in this is be willing to feel it. Be willing to feel the pain, be willing to feel the fear, the joy, right? I know Brene Brown says that joy is actually one of the most vulnerable feelings there is. Right? Be willing to fully feel, because our culture has taught us that like that's dangerous, it's unsafe, it's ungrounded. But man, that is where life itself is like coursing through you. That is the thing that you are seeking, is the experience of those feelings. And just to be able to feel them brings you back into the body. And then you also said something genius of then you can come up into the brain and start to engage that process. But the brain isn't the starting point, it's the support system.
It is. And just learning the awareness of, I mean, I can't, sometimes depending on what's going on, it might be like 50 times a day. I'm like, oh, hey, there I go again. I'm in my head, right? It's not like we get to this place where we're like never in our head. It's just recognizing, oh, wait, I'm in my head. Let's take a moment, take a breath, come back into the body. What's going on there, right? And then just opening the space and sort of making that invitation consciously to engage head and heart. And it's kind of like inviting them to a conference table. What do they have to say together? Because I think also, you know, we talk a lot about how we're wired for safety and security, and the brain wants so badly to keep us safe, right? Sometimes I think we then inadvertently, in this practice of like, all right, I'm going to be embodied, I'm going to be heart-centered, we cut the mind out, right? And that doesn't work either, because things just get louder and louder. And there's this really awesome, I guess maybe sort of like cohesion that gets to happen when we're like, all right, this is what I know to be true in my body. And then we invite the mental aspect or the intellectual aspect back in. And then we can be linear and logistical for a minute, right? Create strategy from that. But those two things together, that's the recipe for alignment, I feel.
Yeah, and I thank you so much for saying that. I feel like what you're describing, I would say is like a flow state, or I actually think when for me, my intuition is that magical space where I'm embodied, I'm coming from the feeling, I'm connected to my heart, and my mind is working with all of that. Like it's very much, yeah, alignment, flow. And have you ever had that flow experience where you're so deeply connected, you're so aware, inspired, you can feel all of those things happening together. And I think I'm hoping all of our listeners have had a moment in their life where they had that experience. And what Melissa is saying is that living body mind is actually intentionally cultivating that. Because I think all too often it feels like it just happens, right? And yes, living body mind is not be in the body and cut off the mind. It's actually engage, right? This is your physiology. Engage your physiology, but also engage this massively connected universe, you know, and spirituality. It's like you're pulling all of that together, and it's living and coursing through you, physiologically coursing through you. And it's such a powerful state, and it's something that you have to practice. It's a muscle that needs to be flexed and learned and strengthened. It's pretty freaking amazing.
It is amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Any final words or anything you'd want to share just to people who are reading and listening and, just taking the next step in their journey?
Just remembering everything you need, like the answers that you're seeking, they're within.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you.
This is Body Mind Living with Laura Wick. Thanks for watching.